Welcome into The Pulse here on Fox 2, Metro Detroit's only nightly political talk show. Former Republican Governor Rick Snyder and former Democratic Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence are both in Studio C tonight, and they have a lot to say about the state of politics today. More with them in just a moment, but first, news of the day and a lot to get to. Let's begin with the U.S. economy. The Federal Reserve not changing interest rates despite pushback from President Trump. That means they'll stay at about 4.3%. Chair Jerome Powell has said the Fed would likely have cut rates already if not for the president's sweeping tariffs, and wants to see the impact on inflation and the broader economy before deciding to make any kind of a cut. By the way, this is the fifth time this year rates have gone unchanged. President Trump announcing this evening that a trade deal has been reached with South Korea. It calls for 15% tariffs on goods from there. Products from South Korea had briefly faced a 25% reciprocal tariff in April before President Trump paused levies impacting dozens of nations, which are set to expire Friday. The president said on Truth Social that as part of the deal, South Korea will give $350 billion for investments owned and controlled by the United States. South Korea is America's seventh greatest source of imports. Tonight's deal comes just days after the U.S. reached a trade deal with the European Union. Well, some big news for supporters of former VP Kamala Harris. Today, she announced she's not planning to run for governor of her home state in California. She says it comes after months of consideration and adds she's looking forward to getting back out and listening to the American people and helping elect Democrats across the country. At this point, she's also not ruled out another run for the presidency in 2028. Well, you know, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to get worse at this hour. The World Food Program, which keeps track of all this, says it's now a full-blown famine with more than 20,000 kids admitted to hospitals for acute malnutrition in just the last 3 months. Dozens of them have died. And as the threat of starvation gets worse and grows, Palestinians are fighting for food, as you see over here, just clamoring. Painful pictures to see. Neighboring countries are stepping up their humanitarian airdrops, but it's simply not enough to feed the entire population. President Trump says the U.S. will partner with Israel to run new food distribution centers, but so far hasn't elaborated on any details. And tonight, Israel still claims there's no famine, that it's all just Hamas propaganda. However, they do say they've paused their offensive in some areas to allow more food and more aid into that region. Turning now to the Epstein case, still making headlines. Tonight, Congress says it's not giving up in its pursuit for answers, with Democrats now looking for a rarely used law to get the Epstein files released. It's a century-old law known as the Rule of Five, and it basically allows Dems on the Senate Homeland Security Committee to go around the committee chair and send the request directly to the Department of Justice. Well, the Trump administration might not appreciate the move. There's bipartisan support when it comes to releasing these files.
And people want to know, and they're entitled to know, who, if anyone, he trafficked these women to.
It's certainly disappointing that we have to take this action to hold President Trump to his word, but we believe that providing this transparency is what is best for the American people.
Democrats say they expect the DOJ to hand over the files by August 15th. In the meantime, Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's currently serving a 20-year sentence for child sex trafficking, is appealing her conviction to the U.S. Supreme Court, which is expected to take up her case at the end of September. Well, the Trump administration making big changes when it comes to health care in America, launching a new program today that'll allow people to share personal health data and medical records across health systems and apps run by private tech companies. The president says it'll make it easier to access health records and monitor wellness.
Today's announcement, we take a major step to bring healthcare into the digital age, something that is absolutely vital. You got to do it. Moving from clipboards and fax machines into a new era of convenience, profitability, and speed, and frankly, better health for people.
In all, more than 60 companies, including ones that you know, like Google and Amazon and Apple, they're healthcare giants like United Health Group as well. They've all kind of agreed to come together and share patient data in this system. Well, the president says it'll streamline things, as you heard him say. Critics warn the system poses privacy and ethical risks, particularly outside existing healthcare guidelines. Officials at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services will be in charge of maintaining the system and say patients will have to now opt in for this program. And by the way, that news comes the same day that Medicaid turns 60 years old. It was on this day, 1965, that President Lyndon B. Johnson signed legislation creating a U.S. healthcare safety net for millions of low-income Americans. But the milestone, as you know, is coming with concern and strong warnings from many lawmakers who have slammed the president's budget bill, which is cutting more than $1 trillion from federal health care and food assistance over the next 10 years, largely by imposing work requirements on those getting help and by shifting certain federal costs onto the states. Republicans say this basically is needed to prevent rising federal deficits and reduce fraud and abuse in the system. According to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, close to 10 million people are expected to end up without health insurance because of these changes. Well, just days after it was voted down in the State House, there's a renewed push tonight for legislation to restrict cell phone use in Michigan school. Many teachers have called for them to be banned in classrooms, saying they're hurting education. And while it seemed to have a lot of support the first time around, the bill fell short last week by 3 votes. You remember that? Well, the bill's primary sponsor, State Rep. Mark Tisdale, says he's rewritten this bill to take into account that emergency phone call that so many kids could make in the middle of a possible active shooter situation. Many parents, many lawmakers were worried about that. Tisdale originally argued kids shouldn't be distracted by phones during shooting situations, but it was a sticking point for so many Democrats. The new bill will, of course, have to go for a vote. We'll continue to follow this one very closely as we watch what happens in Lansing right here in Detroit. And we want to know what you think. And guess what? You had a lot to say. These are just some of the comments. We always say the show's about you, and we mean it. So here's what some of you were telling me. Georgia says, yes, limit the use. They're there for education. Suzanne, thanks for writing in. You say, let them keep their phones and set boundaries just like anything else. Nancy, you say, I don't think phones should be allowed. But we do not need a law. Each district should have rules and consequences. And Aaron Tobin, it's a shame the latest bill didn't pass. It seemed like politicians finally got together and crafted a bill that would really benefit K through 12 students. He goes on to say, I'd love to hear you interview politicians that did not support the bill. Well, Aaron, thank you for that tip. We're taking that seriously. We're actually working the phones, and we're going to get to that topic and bring it back right here to Studio C in the Pulse. And by the way, we also posted a non-scientific poll about this to our website, fox2detroit.com. And look at that. Right now, most of you say, yes, cell phone use should be restricted in schools, 67%. And the rest of them basically saying, 33% saying no. This is, again, a non-scientific poll, but we want to hear from you. If you'd like to weigh in, all you have to do is scan that QR code right there on your screen and chime in. Still ahead, he once held the highest office here in Michigan. Former Governor Rick Snyder joining us in Studio C to talk about everything from the economy to the Republican Party these days. And yes, Medicaid. He had a lot to do with that when he was governor in Michigan. The Pulse continues here on Fox 2. Gonna get my notes. Welcome back to The Pulse. Michigan's governor from 2011 to 2018 is in Studio C tonight to talk all things people, power, and politics. Governor Rick Snyder, good to see you. Thanks for joining us here on The Pulse.
Thanks for having me. It's been a long time. It's good to be back
well,
in
I
the
remember
studio.
The first time I interviewed you, you were running for governor back in 2010, likely, and then you were kind of the candidate who was, many people said, was an unlikely candidate because you came from the business world. And I kind of want to start there, actually, because I think the way we see politics is, all right, if you're a politician, then you get into politics. But if you're a business person, then you stay in the business world. You were, before even President Donald Trump entered politics, in a big state like Michigan, you were the business guy. You disrupted that cycle, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I think a number of people have done it, and I think it's really important. And I encourage more people to do the same thing because the breadth of experience you bring. I mean, to put it in a simple sense, Roop, you've signed payroll checks for people. You understand what's involved to put that check together or how that money was earned. And you understand how many families are relying on that. So I think there's a huge benefit in terms of understanding all these issues. You paid the taxes. You understand the impact of those things. So I think it's a huge leg up. And I was really proud when we created our administration. We did a great balance of sort of inside Lansing people and outside people, and we learned from one another. I actually view diversity as a positive power in terms of bringing different thought processes and perspectives, and we leverage that in a very thoughtful, good way.
Now you have someone who's, in terms of being a businessman, President Donald Trump in office, and you said, I mean, he signed his share of payroll checks. He has seen how Medicare and Medicaid help people. What is your reaction to the budget bill and the Medicaid cuts? Which, by the way, if you're following this, Governor Gretchen Whitmer told us on the Pulse just a few months back that she was working with you to essentially extend Medicaid coverage in many ways. So this has to be impactful to you.
Yeah, one of the proudest accomplishments I had as governor was Healthy Michigan. And that was our version of Medicaid expansion. And I think we did a great job.
What did that do, Governor?
Yeah, it really provided coverage to a lot of people that didn't have health care. But the thing is, just like they're talking about work requirements now, we called it Healthy Michigan because it wasn't about just giving people coverage. We actually asked them to take some personal responsibility for their health. That's not an unreasonable thing to ask, I don't think. And so we built this program that was a balance between what Republicans that were more conservative and the Democrats that were more liberal. It was a great coming together. I'm really proud. I signed the bill in Oakwood Hospital. It's changed names several times. It has. But John Dingell was there, and Debbie Dingell were there. And that showed the bipartisanship to make something like that happen, and it provides health care. The issue now with this new bill is how it gets administered. I am concerned about it. The real question is this work requirement thing. It can't be too burdensome, it can't be too difficult, but the idea of someone, if they can go do work, that's not unreasonable to ask, that they help contribute, and then hopefully they get health care through the employer they would have.
But you're hearing kind of two different stories. Yeah. You're hearing on one end, in fact, I'm hearing from you saying that Healthy Michigan essentially did, in a sense, require some kind of a responsibility by folks. So there is a way to do that, but why doesn't, in your mind, this bill address it in that way?
Well, the interesting part, and this is a huge problem we have in politics today, and we've had, is people think in binary terms. They tend to say, either I like it or I don't like it, I want to fight for this, I want to fight for that. Enough of that. That's not the right principle. The right principle is how do we solve a problem that works for people, that can be applied effectively, they can have results. Quite often it's somewhere in the middle, and that's the way I always viewed my line, relentless positive action. It wasn't about just getting what you want, it was understanding you can compromise, you can come up with a solution that works better for everyone because it's gotten good input. Let's do that with something like this as opposed to just saying it's good or bad.
Okay, let's just say it's okay. So what do we do to make it better? How do we make sure that people don't slip through the cracks when you look at something like this, having done it yourself?
Yeah, well, a lot of things we did do are the programs to help people find employment. Quite often, again, one of the issues you have is the bureaucracy of government, making that too difficult, and streamlining it to make it simpler. So the question is, how do we engage with the private sector, the people that have the jobs, to make it easier for them to connect with the people that are able-bodied and able to work? Because again, a lot of people want to work. I mean, it's self-esteem to people. So when you say it's a burden on them, a lot of people I know that have received benefits, they want to get back to work. And if we can help them do that, isn't that a good thing?
Is there a piece missing in the budget bill that doesn't address that?
Yeah, I haven't looked at the detail. And again, I'm not even sure the people in Washington got a chance to read a whole lot of that. It's a giant bill. So one of the things I say is the federal issues, I'm spending most of my time on state issues.
Like education.
Like education.
And talk about that for a moment, because I feel like that's being ignored across federal and state lines.
Yeah, so education in Michigan, we're failing with our kids. We have to do a better job. And it's amazing to me that there isn't more upset in terms of parents, citizens, everyone else. We should be screaming from the rafters about how we need to do better to help our kids.
Maybe they're too busy trying to keep their heads above water.
Well, the easy illustration is Mississippi has passed us in terms of fourth grade reading. That tends to fire up Michiganders. Whether it's right or wrong, that was always kind of a joke of Michiganders of making some comment about southern states and education. Sure. Mississippi was 49th in 2013. They did third grade reading requirements. They did A to F in terms of grading schools. They're now in the top 10, top 20. Michigan's declined. We had those things. We took them back out, and where's education today in Michigan? We're in the bottom 10.
So what are you doing right now? You're working on an initiative to try to fix that.
Yeah, it's broader than that in my view, though. We need to get people engaged, everyone looking at it. And the question I have for people, and the way I describe it, Roop, is even broader and simpler in many respects. We have a 19th century education system that goes back to the 1800s. We take the summer off so you can go pick crops. We have teachers standing in front of classrooms lecturing. We need to change it to a 21st century educational system, and that requires actually supporting teachers even more than we have in the past, but asking them to do new and different things. I'll give you an easy illustration. Where can you find kids fired up about geometry? Where will they smile coming out of class and they've done geometry? The carpentry class.
Right.
Because it's now something real. It's not X, Y, and Z. Can you get excited if we sat here and said, okay, Roop, let's have a discussion about X, Y, and Z?
No, I didn't.
But if I said we want to build something and we got to know the angles, you're going to learn geometry.
I know it's simplifying.
We should be doing that across the board.
Field trips to a trade school, but understanding the import of trade schools also. But as someone who's highly educated, you know that it's important also to realize that not everyone is going to get a 4-year college degree. Some people want to go into the trades. And that's something that I think is also being ignored, yes?
Yeah, I think we do need to step that up. But just as I said, we should make those programs more accessible, like carpentry, because kids will learn these skill sets. That was a huge emphasis for me, because if you look at it, they're great, well-paying jobs, the skilled trades. And I hate it when people say, oh, they should go into that because they're good with their hands. That's even derogatory in my view.
Yeah, they're good with their minds.
Yeah, they're good with their minds.
Absolutely.
And let them fly.
100%. You know what? That's a way to do it. And you're doing this right now. Where can people find you? On social media, they can find you on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
perhaps,
LinkedIn, they can find me, and I'll be around more, particularly talking about education.
Come back and talk about education here. We'll spend even more time with it. Governor Rick Snyder, good to see you here on The Pulse.
Good to see you.
Great to have you. After the break, we're taking our conversation to the other side of the aisle, talking about the budget bill and her concerns. A woman you know well, former Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence. Hey, by the way, she was the mayor of Southfield. She's in our Southfield studio to talk about the state of politics today. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. Welcome back to The Pulse, Metro Detroit's only nightly political talk show. Turning to the Democratic side of things, joining us now, former Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence. We're talking about getting back to civility in politics, and we're talking about the budget bill. We'll begin with that here tonight, but first we want to say thanks for joining us here.
Thank you for having me.
I have a funny joke with Brenda Lawrence, a Congresswoman, when she was the mayor of Southfield. One time I was coming to a speaking engagement back in 2009, and I said, I'm speeding over there to get there, and one of your aides says, don't speed too fast. This is her city. This is what you're speeding to get into the place. But you moved on and you sped your career up, and you went right from mayor to Congresswoman. You were serving in those hallowed chambers. Had you been in those chambers when the budget bill came through, what would you be saying in that microphone?
There's a couple things that happen. There's a saying, don't hate the player, hate the game. And the game that was played, we're going to devastate the American people, but we're going to make it start up later. So these cuts to housing, to education, to Social Security, Medicaid, all those things are going to happen after the midterm elections. Why would you do that? If the bill is so worthy and so beautiful and so big, it should happen immediately.
And some pieces of it do go, that's what's interesting,
Yeah.
some pieces of it do go into effect right away.
Yes.
Like some of the Social Security benefits for seniors, some
Yes.
other things.
The
But some of
good
the
stuff.
other pieces, you have to wait. And that's concerning to you. What is it about what you heard Governor Snyder talking about a few moments ago? He said when he was in Michigan, he made sure that there were requirements to make people feel worthy of the benefits they're getting. Is there an even ground here, a middle ground of how to do work requirements?
Absolutely. I am now chair of the Oakland County Democratic Party. I am in support, and the party is in support of individuals who get federal aid, that they're deserving and needed, and it is a necessity, not to take care of them, but to empower them and make sure they're safe, and if hopefully, like the governor said, train them. There are some people who have never worked. I went to a job fair, and they told me, before you speak to these high school kids, there's some children here who are third generation, never seen anyone go to work. So when you say go to school so that you can get a job and go to work, I have food, I have shelter, why do I need to work? It's education, and if we as a country are going to be competitive, You talk about tariffs. We need an educated workforce that has been trained and that has been empowered and get a salary that they can have a quality of life.
It sounds like you're saying there's some systemic issues when there are generations of some folks, not everybody, but some folks who have not had to work and are getting the benefits. Isn't this bill helping disrupt that, saying, hey, if you can't go to work, you can't go to school, at least do something charitable, do some community service? What's wrong with that?
Now, Rue, I will tell you, immigration. I believe in protecting our borders, and I believe in a system and a process for you to become an American citizen. However, what we see happening now with this brute force and just random rounding people up, what is the plan for this administration? What are you going to do to ensure that we're educating our children? Because you're constantly cutting the budget. All you hear is celebration. We cut the budget. We got the chainsaw in the air. But what is your plan to make America's laws and policies benefit America and take us to another
So you don't
level?
have a problem then, for instance, with the work requirements per se. You're saying the way this is being done in such a quick, brazen way is what you have an issue with. So what then do you think about when people say we've got to shift some of the costs to the state? What does that do for someone who's served in this country before? How does that work? How does Michigan pick up the tab?
It doesn't work because all you're doing is shifting, but you haven't changed the infrastructure. So if you're shifting, is there going to be a mechanism for taxes that we're collecting to now be shifted and directed to the state? Are we going to require the same infrastructure that you had in the federal government now in the state who could not afford that? So by saying that, are you literally taking away programs and resources to each state? There are some states that have less revenue than others, and they're going to be impacted at a level that will be devastating. So it's good to sit at the desk and make a policy, but let's get in the weeds. How is it going to happen? And what is the expectation for our states? Because each state governs different.
As a lifelong Democrat, what responsibility do you think Democrats have in maintaining civility in this world? Not without saying the word MAGA once or Donald Trump once or the president, what responsibility do Democrats have?
Democrats have the responsibility to ensure that we are making policies and laws that elevates this country. America first is not a bad thing. I don't know what the mega thing is. That is not about America. That's about satisfying an agenda and a person. But when we talk about what's best for America, where all ships rise, and that's something that the Democratic Party has been royal and has been known for and successful, is that if I get an education, if I am given an opportunity, I can compete and I can rise. I don't leave you on the side of the road and pump my fists and say, I made it, so be it.
But perhaps talking about these kitchen table issues that you're talking about more so than the gender on a bathroom or what sports someone should be able to play is perhaps more paramount in people's lives. And I hear you saying that here. Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, former Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, it's so good to see you. We thank you for your time here on The Pulse.
Thank you so much.
Always good to see you.
Thank you.
That is The Pulse for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, you can always get a hold of us anytime by hitting this QR code right now. You can email us. You have a question, maybe you have a fact check you'd like to see. Just hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Roop Raj. As always, it was great to be with you.